Lucas James entered his house that evening, a sense of unease washing over him like a cold draft. The silence was oppressive, a suffocating blanket that muffled even the slightest sound. "Annabelle? Mirabelle? Isabel?" He called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. Nothing. A knot of anxiety tightened in his chest, his heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He sought out the security guard, his face etched with worry. "Where are they?" "The garden, sir," the guard replied. "With the new maid." Lucas moved with a purpose toward the back of the estate, the manicured lawns stretching out before him like a verdant carpet. But what he saw stopped him dead in his tracks, freezing him in place as if he'd been turned to stone. His 3 daughters, who had remained motionless for 3 long years, their faces devoid of expression, their eyes vacant and distant, were now on a blanket in the grass. And they were reaching, their tiny hands outstretched, their faces breaking into hesitant smiles, their eyes sparkling with life. For the first time since the day their mother died, 3 years ago, Lucas James felt a flicker of something he thought God had cruelly stolen from him forever. Hope. Let me tell you how we got here, because I promise you, this story will tear your heart to shreds before it even begins to offer the slightest chance of healing. 3 years ago, Lucas James lost his beloved wife, Emily. She had died giving birth to their triplet daughters, their arrival into the world marked by tragedy and loss. The doctors had fought valiantly, employing every medical intervention at their disposal. But Emily's body, weakened and exhausted, had simply given out. The last thing she had said to Lucas, her voice a mere whisper against the sterile backdrop of the hospital room, was, "Promise me, you'll show them joy. I promise," he had vowed, his voice thick with emotion, his heart shattering into a million pieces. But when Emily died, something within Lucas died, too. The light in his eyes dimmed, the laughter faded from his lips, and the joy that Emily had so desperately wanted for their daughters seemed to vanish from the world altogether. He brought his 3 baby girls home, Annabelle, Mirabelle, and Isabel, their tiny faces mirroring his own grief. And he truly did. He hired a team of nannies, spared no expense in providing them with everything they could possibly need, from the finest organic formula to the most exquisitely crafted toys. But every time he looked at them, all he saw was Emily, the woman he had lost, the love of his life. And slowly, imperceptibly, without even realizing it, Lucas stopped living. He stopped playing music, the melodies now laced with painful memories of Emily, their shared passion. He stopped laughing because in his world, there was nothing left to laugh about. He stopped hoping because hope, he discovered, hurt too much. And the girls, those sensitive, intuitive little beings, they felt it. They absorbed his grief like sponges, their own spirits becoming heavy with sorrow. By the time they were 6 months old, they had stopped babbling, their coos and gurgles replaced by an unsettling silence. At 1 year, they showed no interest in trying to stand, their limbs remaining limp and unresponsive. 2 years, nothing. No words, no steps, just an echoing silence that permeated every corner of their existence. Lucas, desperate to find a solution, spent over $1 million on specialists, flying in renowned doctors from Johns Hopkins, sought out leading therapists from Boston, consulted with 23 different experts in child development. But every test came back the same, nothing physically wrong. One doctor, a compassionate woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor, had told him, "Mr. James, children mirror what they see, and right now, they're mirroring grief." Lucas, unable to accept the truth, fired her on the spot. He couldn't bear the thought that his own pain was slowly killing his daughters, so he retreated further into his own grief, refusing to confront the reality of the situation. He stopped trying to fix them, resigned to their fate. He hired a staff to feed them, change them, and keep them breathing. That was it. No therapy, no hope, just survival. His daughters turned 3 years old, and they still hadn't spoken, hadn't walked, hadn't shown any signs of life beyond the basic biological functions. They sat in their chairs like beautiful, silent dolls, their eyes vacant and unseeing. And Lucas, In his despair, convinced himself that this was fine, that this was safe. He was wrong. Then Jasmine Baker entered his life. She wasn't supposed to change anything, wasn't supposed to disrupt the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart. She was just a housekeeper, hired to help with the girls, to ease the burden on the existing staff. But Jasmine possessed a gift that Lucas was completely unaware of, a secret weapon that would shatter the silence and breathe life back into his daughters. She had a degree in occupational therapy, a passion for helping broken children heal. She'd spent 5 years learning the intricacies of child development, mastering the techniques to unlock the potential within those who had been left behind. But life, as it often does, had taken her dreams away, crushing them beneath the weight of tragedy and responsibility. Her younger brother had been shot and paralyzed in a senseless act of violence, leaving him confined to a wheelchair and drowning her in a sea of medical bills. She had been forced to abandon her career, to trade her scrubs for cleaning supplies, cleaning houses to keep him alive, to provide him with the care he desperately needed. When Lucas's assistant offered her $15,000 a month to live in and care for his daughters, Jasmine almost said no. The thought of working in such a wealthy, privileged environment, surrounded by so much pain and silence, filled her with dread. But she needed the money, her brother's life depended on it. So she accepted the position, steeling herself for the challenges that lay ahead. The day she met the girls, something broke inside her chest. 3 little girls with big, empty eyes sitting in chairs, not moving, not speaking, just existing. Their faces held no expression, no spark of joy, no flicker of recognition. "Hi, sweethearts," Jasmine whispered, her voice barely audible. "My name is Jasmine." They didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge her presence. But their eyes, those haunted, desolate eyes, were screaming, begging for help, pleading for someone to see them, to hear them, to understand the pain that was trapped within their silent world. That night, Jasmine prayed, her heart heavy with sorrow. "God, I don't know why you brought me here, but if you did, please show me how to help them. Please give me the strength, the wisdom, the guidance to break through the silence and bring them back to life." And God answered. On her 3rd day, Jasmine found something in Lucas's closet, boxes hidden in the back, tucked away as if he were ashamed of their existence. Inside them, women's clothes, carefully preserved, still carrying the faint scent of Emily's perfume. A journal filled with her hopes and dreams, and an iPad. A note on the iPad said simply, "For Lucas, play this for our girls every day. Emily." Jasmine's hands shook as she opened it. Dozens of videos. Emily, pregnant and radiant, her face glowing with anticipation, and then Emily, weak and fading, her body ravaged by illness, but her spirit still strong, still determined to leave a legacy of love for her daughters. In one video, Emily was singing, her voice sweet and clear, filling the room with melody and joy. In another, she was crying, her tears streaming down her face, begging Lucas to show their girls joy, to play music, to dance with them, to live so they could learn how to live. "Lucas," Emily said through tears, her voice cracking with emotion. "Children mirror what they see. If they see you frozen in grief, they'll freeze too. Please, baby, show them life." Jasmine understood everything in that moment. Emily had left a road map to save her daughters, a carefully crafted plan to guide them back to the light, and Lucas had locked it away, burying it beneath layers of grief and despair, because the pain was too much to bear. But Jasmine wasn't afraid. She had faced her own demons, had stared into the abyss of loss and emerged stronger, more resilient. She knew she had to do something. She had to honor Emily's wishes. She had to save those little girls. The next morning, she broke every rule Lucas had made, defied every expectation, and followed her heart. She took the girls outside, into the sunshine, into the fresh air. She played Emily's music, sang Emily's songs, her voice cracking and wavering, but filled with love and intention. And slowly, so slowly, the girls started waking up, their eyes widening, their bodies softening, their spirits stirring. That's when Lucas came home and saw them in the garden. That's when everything changed. Before I show you what happened next, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because I believe God orchestrates moments. He puts people in places at the exact right time for a reason. And maybe this story found you today because you needed to remember something. It's never too late to hope again. Now, let me show you the miracle that happened next. Lucas stood at the edge of the garden, hidden behind the stone archway, and he couldn't move. He'd been standing there for 5 minutes, maybe more, just watching, transfixed by the scene unfolding before him. Jasmine was sitting cross-legged on the blanket, singing, her voice imperfect, but full of heart. She wasn't a good singer. Her voice cracked on the high notes, and she forgot half the words. But she was smiling, laughing at herself, moving her hands like she was conducting an invisible orchestra. And his daughters, his 3 silent, frozen daughters, were watching her like she was the most fascinating thing they'd ever seen. Annabelle's eyes were tracking Jasmine's hands, following every movement with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Mirabelle's mouth was open slightly, like she was trying to remember how to smile, as if the muscles in her face had atrophied from disuse. And Isabel Lucas's heart nearly stopped. Isabel's little hand was reaching up toward Jasmine's face, slow, trembling, but reaching, drawn to the warmth and light emanating from this woman who had dared to break through the silence. Lucas felt something crack open in his chest, a fissure forming in the wall he had built around his heart. He hadn't seen them move like that since he couldn't even remember. Maybe never. For 3 years they'd been statues, beautiful breathing statues that he fed and changed and kept alive, but never really saw, never truly connected with. And now, watching them in the morning sunlight, surrounded by the sound of Jasmine's imperfect singing and the smell of fresh-cut grass, Lucas realized something that made his knees weak, a truth that shattered his carefully constructed reality. His daughters weren't broken. They'd been waiting for someone to show them it was safe to be alive again, waiting for someone to unlock the joy that had been buried beneath layers of grief and despair. He stepped forward, his shoes crunching on the gravel path, the sound shattering the fragile peace of the moment. Jasmine's head snapped up, her face went pale, her eyes widening in alarm. "Mr. James?" she started, scrambling to her feet, her voice laced with anxiety. But Lucas wasn't looking at her. He was looking at his daughters, his heart aching with a mixture of hope and fear. Annabelle's hand had frozen mid-reach, her eyes darting nervously toward him. Mirabelle's almost smile disappeared, her face becoming blank and expressionless once more. Isabel's eyes went blank again, that terrible emptiness sliding back over her face like a curtain, extinguishing the spark of life that had briefly flickered within them. And just like that, they were statues again, frozen in time, their bodies rigid, their spirits withdrawn. Lucas felt the anger rise in his throat, a burning tide threatening to consume him. Not at Jasmine, but at himself. They were afraid of him. His own daughters were afraid of him. "How long have you been doing this?" His voice came out rough, strangled, betraying the turmoil raging within him. Jasmine's hands were shaking, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Mr. James, I can explain." "How long?" he demanded, his voice rising in intensity. 3 days, she whispered, her voice barely audible. 3 days. In 3 days, this woman had done what 23 specialists and $1 million couldn't do. She'd made his daughters reach for something, want something, feel something. Lucas's jaw clenched so hard it hurt, his teeth grinding together in silent fury. "I gave you one job," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Keep them fed. Keep them safe. That's it." "I know, but I just wanted to help," Jasmine stammered, her eyes filled with remorse. "I didn't ask you to play therapist," he interrupted, his voice rising now, sharp and cold. "I didn't ask you to go through my wife's things. I didn't ask you to." He stopped, his words catching in his throat, because Jasmine was looking at him with something that wasn't fear, something that cut deeper than any anger, something that made him want to shrink away and disappear. It was pity, and that was worse than anything. "Mr. James," she said quietly, her voice filled with compassion. When's the last time you sat with them? The question hit him like a punch to the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. He opened his mouth to retort, to deflect, to deny, but the words wouldn't come. That's none of your. When's the last time you held them, sang to them, played with them? She persisted, her eyes unwavering. Lucas felt his hands start to shake, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. You don't know what you're talking about, he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. I know they're 3 years old and they've never heard their father laugh, she said, her words hanging in the air between them, heavy with truth and accusation. Lucas opened his mouth, but nothing came out because she was right. God help him. She was right. He hadn't laughed in 3 years, hadn't sung, hadn't played, hadn't lived. He'd been so busy keeping them safe, so focused on protecting them from the world, that he'd forgotten to give them a reason to want to be alive. Get them inside, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes filled with pain. It's time for their lunch. He turned and walked back toward the house before Jasmine could see his face, before she could see that he was falling apart, that the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart were crumbling into dust. Behind him, he heard her gathering the girls, her voice soft and apologetic. Come on, sweethearts, let's go inside. And as Lucas stepped into the cold, silent house, he realized something that terrified him more than anything else. He didn't know how to fix this. He didn't know how to be what they needed. He was lost, adrift in a sea of grief and despair, with no compass, no map, no hope of finding his way back to the light. And for the first time in 3 years, Lucas James understood that keeping his daughters breathing wasn't the same as keeping his promise to Emily. He'd been keeping them alive, but he hadn't been teaching them how to live. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house press down on her like a weight, suffocating her with its oppressive emptiness. Down the hall, the girls were sleeping, their breaths shallow and uneven. She checked on them twice already, unable to shake the image of their vacant eyes, their lifeless bodies. They slept the way they did everything else. Perfectly still, perfectly quiet, as if even in their dreams, they'd learned not to make a sound, not to disturb the silence that had become their prison. Jasmine rolled over and picked up her phone, seeking solace in the familiar connection to her family. A text from her mom. Marcus had a good day in PT. Stood for 30 seconds. Doctor says he's getting stronger. She smiled, but it felt hollow, a fleeting flicker of joy that quickly faded into the darkness. $15,000 a month. That's what this job was worth. The price of her dreams. The weight of her responsibility. With that kind of money, Marcus could get the surgery he needed, the better wheelchair, the home modifications that would make his life easier, more comfortable. All she had to do was follow the rules. Feed the girls, change them, keep them clean, don't try to fix them. But how could she not try? She'd seen Isabel reach today, seen Mirabelle almost smile, seen Annabelle's eyes light up with something that looked like hope. And then Lucas had walked in, and all of it disappeared, extinguished like a candle in the wind. Jasmine squeezed her eyes shut, remembering the look on his face. He wasn't angry. Not really. He was terrified. Terrified of what? That his daughters might actually heal, that they might break free from the silence and demand something more from him than just survival. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from her mom. Thank you for everything you're doing, baby. We couldn't survive without you. Jasmine's chest tightened, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her, threatening to suffocate her. She typed back, I love you. Tell Marcus I'm proud of him. Then she put the phone down and stared at the darkness, her mind racing, her heart aching. God, what am I supposed to do here? She whispered, her voice lost in the silence of the room. Downstairs, Lucas sat in his office with the lights off, shrouded in darkness. He hadn't moved in 2 hours, his body stiff and aching, his mind consumed by the events of the day. On his desk, his laptop was open to the security camera footage, the images flickering across the screen like ghosts. He'd watched it 17 times now, replaying the same scene over and over again, searching for answers, searching for hope. Jasmine in the garden with the girls singing, moving, their faces illuminated by the sunlight. And the girls, his girls responding, their eyes widening, their bodies softening, their spirits stirring. He paused it on Isabel's face, zooming in on her expression, that moment right before he walked in, her hand reaching up, her eyes wide and curious. Alive. Lucas felt tears burn behind his eyes, but he wouldn't let them fall. He'd cried enough 3 years ago. Crying didn't change anything. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. The problem was he couldn't fire Jasmine. He wanted to, he should. She'd broken his rules, gone through Emily's things, disrupted the routine he'd spent 3 years building, but she'd also done something no one else had done. She'd made his daughters want something. Lucas rubbed his face with both hands, trying to erase the image of Isabel's reaching hand from his mind. Emily's voice was in his head now, echoing through the darkness. That video Jasmine must have found, the one he'd only watched once before locking it away forever, the one that held the key to saving his daughters. Lucas, children mirror what they see, Emily had said, her voice filled with love and urgency. If they see you frozen, they'll freeze too. He'd spent 3 years proving her right, living a life of grief and despair. And his daughters had mirrored his pain, their spirits becoming trapped in a silent, frozen world. His daughters weren't disabled. They weren't damaged. They were mirrors, and all they'd been reflecting back to him was his own grief, his own fear, his own death. Lucas stood up and walked to the window, gazing out into the darkness. From here, he could see the garden, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. The grass looked silver, the trees casting long, dancing shadows. He thought about going upstairs, checking on the girls, maybe sitting with them for a few minutes, just to be near them. But what would he even do? He didn't know how to play, didn't know how to sing, didn't know how to be anything other than the ghost he'd become, the empty shell of the man he once was. So he stayed in his office like he did every night, keeping his distance, keeping them safe, keeping them frozen. The next morning, Jasmine came downstairs to find Lucas waiting in the kitchen. He was dressed for work, suit, tie, briefcase by the door, but he wasn't leaving. He was just standing there, holding a cup of coffee, staring at nothing, lost in his own thoughts. He wasn't drinking it. The coffee was cold, untouched. "Mr. James," Jasmine said carefully, her voice hesitant. He looked up, and for a second, she saw something raw and vulnerable in his eyes, something that had been hidden beneath layers of grief and despair, something broken. "The girls," he said, his voice barely audible. How did you know what to do with them?" Jasmine wasn't expecting that question. She had braced herself for anger, for recriminations, for dismissal, but not for this vulnerability, this desperate plea for help. "I didn't," she admitted, her voice honest and sincere. I treated them like they were still in there, still listening, still hoping." Lucas's jaw worked, his eyes searching her face for answers. "And you think that's enough? Hope?" "I think it's a start," Jasmine replied, her voice firm but gentle. He set his coffee down on the counter, the sound echoing in the silent kitchen. Didn't look at her. "Don't take them outside anymore," he said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's too unpredictable. Too many variables." Jasmine felt her heart sink, the flicker of hope that had ignited within her threatening to be extinguished. "Mr. James." But he paused, swallowed hard, as if forcing himself to say the words that followed. "But you can play music in the house quietly." Jasmine stared at him, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Emily's music," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes fixed on the floor. "If you still have it, you can play it." It wasn't much, a small concession, a hesitant step forward. It wasn't even close to what those girls needed, but it was something. It was Lucas taking one small, terrified step forward, reaching out from the darkness, searching for a glimmer of light. "Thank you," Jasmine said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. Lucas nodded once, picked up his briefcase, and walked out the door. But for the first time in 3 years, he looked back before he left. Just once, a fleeting glance at the staircase that led to his daughter's room, and Jasmine saw it. The smallest crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. A glimmer of hope breaking through the darkness. Jasmine waited until she heard Lucas's car pull out of the driveway, the sound fading into the distance. Then she went upstairs, got the girls ready, and brought them down to the living room. She set them on the soft carpet, arranged pillows around them so they wouldn't fall, creating a safe and comfortable space. They sat there, still and silent, watching her with those big, gray eyes, their expressions unreadable. Jasmine pulled out her phone, found Emily's playlist, her heart pounding with anticipation. Her finger hovered over the play button, her mind racing with doubts and fears. This was it. Lucas had given permission, but she knew what he meant. Play it quietly. Don't push. Don't hope for too much. But Jasmine hadn't come this far to play it safe. She'd seen the spark of life in those girls' eyes, and she wasn't about to let it be extinguished. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed play. A soft jazz melody filled the room, piano and saxophone, gentle and warm. A soothing balm for the silence that had permeated their lives for so long. The girls didn't react. Not at first. They sat there, unmoving, their faces blank. Jasmine knelt down in front of them, her eyes filled with compassion. "Your mama loved this song," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "She wanted you to hear it every morning." Nothing. But then Annabelle blinked. Slow, deliberate, as if she were struggling to break through the fog that had clouded her mind. Jasmine's heart skipped a beat, a surge of hope coursing through her veins. She started moving her shoulders to the rhythm, just a little, swaying side to side, inviting them to join her, to feel the music, to break free from the silence. "Come on, sweethearts," she whispered. "Feel it. It's okay to feel it." Mirabelle's head tilted, just slightly, following Jasmine's movement, her eyes widening with curiosity. Jasmine smiled, fighting back tears, her heart swelling with emotion. She picked up Isabel, held her close, and started swaying with her. Dancing, if you could call it that. Just gentle movement, just life, just a connection between two souls. Isabel's body was stiff at first, resistant, as if she had forgotten how to move, how to feel. But then, slowly, so slowly, Jasmine almost missed it. Isabel's head relaxed against her shoulder, her body softening, her spirit responding to the music, to the warmth, to the love. "That's it, baby girl," Jasmine whispered, her voice filled with tenderness. "I've got you." She danced with each of them, one at a time, singing along to Emily's songs, even though she didn't know all the words, making up lyrics when she forgot, laughing at herself when she messed up, creating a space of joy and acceptance, a haven from the silence and despair. And the girls, they were different. Not walking, not talking, but present, their eyes brighter, their bodies less rigid, their spirits stirring. Annabelle's fingers curled around Jasmine's sleeve, her touch tentative, but real. Mirabelle made a sound, just a tiny hum, barely audible over the music, but it was there, a spark of life breaking through the silence. Jasmine sat them back down on the carpet and lay beside them, staring at the ceiling, her heart filled with gratitude and hope. "Your mom is watching," she said quietly, her voice filled with love. "And she's so proud of you." Lucas left work at noon. He told his assistant he had a headache, a convenient excuse to mask the turmoil raging within him. Told his team to handle the afternoon meetings without him, unable to face the charade of normalcy. He didn't know why he was going home. He just knew he needed to. He was drawn back to that house, to those girls, to the music that had shattered the silence and awakened something within him. When he pulled into the driveway, he could hear it before he even opened the door. Music. Emily's music. The sound washed over him, a wave of memories and emotions, both joyful and painful. His hand froze on the door handle, his heart pounding in his chest. Part of him wanted to turn around, get back in the car, go back to the office where it was safe and silent and nothing hurt. But he didn't. He couldn't. The pull was too strong, the hope too compelling. He opened the door as quietly as he could and stepped inside, his breath held captive in his lungs. The music was coming from the living room. He walked toward it, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest, his hands trembling with anticipation and fear. And then he saw them. Jasmine was on the floor with the girls, all four of them lying in a circle holding hands, their faces peaceful and serene. The music played softly from her phone, filling the room with a sense of calm and tranquility. But it wasn't the music that made Lucas stop breathing. It was Mirabelle. She was moving her leg, just a little, kicking it gently in time with the rhythm, a small, unconscious movement that spoke volumes. Not because someone moved it for her, not because she was being manipulated or tested or examined, because she wanted to, because the music had awakened something within her, a spark of life that had been dormant for 3 long years. Lucas pressed his hand against the wall to steady himself, his knees weak, his vision blurred with tears. 3 years. 3 years of doctors and specialists and therapists and tests. 3 years of being told nothing was wrong, that it was trauma, that it was psychological, that they just needed time. And all it took was music. All it took was someone willing to try, someone willing to break the silence and offer a glimmer of hope. Jasmine must have sensed him because her head turned, her eyes meeting his across the room. She didn't jump up, didn't apologize, didn't stop the music, didn't try to explain. She just looked at him, her expression gentle but firm, her eyes filled with compassion and understanding. And Lucas saw something in her eyes that made his throat close up, something that went beyond her role as a caregiver, something that spoke of a deep and unwavering love for those girls. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. She was showing him what love looked like, what keeping his promise to Emily actually meant. Lucas stood there in the doorway, frozen in place, watching his daughter move for the first time in her life. And he felt something inside him that had been frozen for 3 years begin to crack. A slow, agonizing fissure forming in the wall he had built around his heart. Not enough to break through completely. Not yet, but enough to hurt, enough to make him feel alive again. Enough to make him wonder if maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong about everything. He turned and walked back out before anyone saw his face, before anyone saw that he was crying, before anyone saw the depth of his pain and the glimmer of hope that had begun to flicker within him. But this time he didn't go to the office. He sat in his car in the driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel, his body shaking with sobs, and he let himself feel it. The grief, the hope, the terror, all of it. He let it wash over him, cleanse him, break him down, and rebuild him piece by piece. For the first time in 3 years, Lucas James let himself feel. Lucas didn't come inside for dinner that night. Jasmine fed the girls, bathed them, put them to bed, all the while glancing at the window, seeing his car still sitting in the driveway, just sitting there, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets within the house. Mrs. Chun noticed too, her eyes filled with concern. "He does that sometimes?" she said quietly, setting down a basket of laundry, her voice hushed with respect. "Parks in the driveway and just sits, sometimes for hours. Just leave him be." Jasmine looked at the clock. It had been 3 hours now. "Should someone check on him?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. Mrs. Chun shook her head, her expression firm. "He doesn't like to be disturbed when he's like this. Trust me, I've tried. Just let him be. He'll come in when he's ready." But after Mrs. Chun left for the night, Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about it. She made a cup of tea chamomile, the way her mother used to make it when Jasmine couldn't sleep, the soothing aroma filling her with a sense of calm and peace, and walked outside, drawn to him by an invisible force. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of flowers and freshly cut grass. Jasmine could see Lucas through the windshield, his head back against the seat, eyes closed, his face pale and drawn. She knocked softly on the window, her heart pounding in her chest. Lucas's eyes opened, his gaze unfocused, disoriented. For a second, he looked confused, as if he didn't recognize her, as if he were lost in a dream. Then he saw the tea in her hand and something shifted in his expression. A flicker of recognition, a glimmer of gratitude. He rolled down the window, the silence of the night broken by the hum of the electric motor. Thought you might need this, Jasmine said, holding out the cup, her voice soft and gentle. Lucas stared at it like he'd forgotten what tea was, like he hadn't tasted anything but grief for the past 3 years. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he took it, his fingers brushing against hers. A fleeting connection that sent a shiver down her spine. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. His eyes filled with a pain that mirrored her own. Jasmine should have walked away, gone back inside, left him alone like Mrs. Chun had advised. But she didn't. She couldn't. Something kept her rooted to the spot. A sense of responsibility. A need to connect. A desire to help him break free from the darkness that had consumed him. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice hesitant. Lucas didn't answer, but he didn't tell her to leave either. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, his face etched with weariness. "Why'd you come home early today?" she persisted, her voice gentle but firm. His jaw tightened, his hands clenching around the cup. "I don't know," he mumbled, his voice filled with frustration. "Yes, you do," Jasmine challenged, her eyes unwavering. He looked at her then, really looked at her, seeing beyond the housekeeper, beyond the caregiver, seeing the woman beneath, the woman who had dared to break the silence and awaken his daughters. And Jasmine saw how exhausted he was, not physically, but emotionally, like he'd been holding up a mountain for 3 years, and his arms were finally giving out. "I heard the music," he said quietly, his voice filled with a pain that resonated deep within her. "From the car." He paused, took a shaky breath, and continued. "I heard it, and I couldn't stay away." He paused again, his voice cracking with emotion. "You saw Mirabelle moving?" "Yes," Jasmine replied softly, her eyes filled with compassion. And Lucas's hands tightened around the cup, his knuckles turning white, and a look of abject terror crossed his face. "And it terrified me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Jasmine leaned against the car, looking up at the stars, their distant light offering a glimmer of hope in the darkness. "Why?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Because what if she stops again?" he said, his voice filled with despair. "What if they all start to hope, start to try?" And then his voice cracked, and he couldn't finish the sentence. "What if I can't give them what they need?" There it was, the truth he'd been hiding from for 3 years, the fear that had driven him into the darkness, the belief that he was incapable of being the father his daughters needed. "Mr. James?" Jasmine said gently, reaching out and touching his arm, her touch offering a silent reassurance. "You've been so focused on protecting them from disappointment that you forgot something important." "What?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes filled with anguish. "They need you to be disappointed with them," she said, her voice firm but kind. "They need you to fail with them. That's what parents do. They try, they mess up, they try again." Lucas closed his eyes, his face contorted with pain. "I don't know how to do that," he whispered, his voice filled with despair. "Nobody does," Jasmine replied softly. "We're all just guessing, stumbling through the darkness, hoping to find our way." "Emily would have known," he said, his voice filled with longing, a yearning for the woman who had been his guide, his strength, his light. "Maybe," Jasmine conceded, her heart aching for him. "But Emily's not here." She paused, took a deep breath, and continued, her voice soft but firm. "You are. And those girls upstairs, they don't need a perfect father. They need their father. The one who's scared and broken and doesn't have all the answers. The one who will try, even when he's terrified, even when he doesn't know what to do." Lucas didn't. He found them dressed in soft clothes. Little cotton pants and t-shirts, nothing that would bind or restrict their movements. Their hair, meticulously brushed, was tied back with colored ribbons, pink for Annabelle, a sunny yellow for Mirabelle, and a calming blue for Isabel. But when they saw Lucas standing there, a hush fell over them, a stillness that wasn't the peaceful quiet of sleep. This was the frozen stillness of raw fear, a palpable thing that struck Lucas like a physical blow to his chest. "Good morning," he managed, his voice rougher, more strained than he intended. The girls didn't respond. their eyes fixed on him as if he were a complete stranger. And wasn't he? A stranger who happened to live in their house, sharing the same space, but offering nothing of himself, no touch, no words, no connection, no love. Jasmine gently guided the girls to the kitchen table, settling them into their specially adapted chairs. She began preparing their breakfast, the familiar oatmeal with mashed bananas, just the way they liked it. Lucas stood there, utterly useless, a bystander in his own home. "Mr. James," Jasmine said softly, breaking the silence, "would you like to help feed them?" A tremor ran through Lucas's hands. I don't know if it's okay." "It is," she assured him. "I'll show you." She handed him a small spoon and a bowl, then guided him to sit in front of Annabelle. Lucas lowered himself into the chair slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. His daughter, his firstborn, the one Emily had proudly held first in the delivery room, looked at him with wide, unblinking eyes that seemed to pierce his very soul. "Hi, sweetheart," Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible. He received no response, no flicker of recognition. Gathering his courage, he lifted a spoonful of oatmeal towards her mouth. His hand trembled so violently that the spoon rattled against the ceramic bowl, a jarring sound in the quiet kitchen. Annabelle opened her mouth mechanically, accepted the food without expression, swallowed, but her gaze never wavered from his face. Lucas tried again, another spoonful, then another. On the fourth bite, his hand shook so hard that a dollop of oatmeal dripped onto her shirt, leaving a pale stain on the soft fabric. "I'm so sorry," Lucas said quickly, guilt washing over him. He reached for a napkin, his movements clumsy. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." And then something happened, something so unexpected that it seemed to suspend time itself. Annabelle's hand moved, slow, hesitant, uncertain, but undeniably deliberate. She reached up and touched his hand. Just her tiny fingers, light as air, resting on his wrist. Lucas couldn't breathe. He looked at Jasmine, his eyes wide with a mixture of panic and profound wonder. Jasmine had tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling, a radiant, hopeful smile. "Keep going," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Lucas fed Annabelle the rest of her breakfast with her small hand resting on his wrist, a fragile anchor in a sea of guilt and regret. When the bowl was empty, she pulled her hand back, but something in her eyes had shifted, a subtle but unmistakable change. She'd seen him, really seen him, and she hadn't looked away. After breakfast, Jasmine led the girls to the living room. Lucas followed, unsure of what else to do, drawn by an invisible force. She put on Emily's music, that same soft, comforting jazz that had always filled their home with warmth. Then she did something Lucas wasn't expecting. She stood up and held out her hand to him. "Your turn." "My turn to what?" "Dance with them like Emily asked you to." Lucas felt a surge of panic rising in his chest, threatening to overwhelm him. "I can't. I don't know how to." "Yes, you do," Jasmine insisted gently. "You danced at your wedding. I saw the photo in the hallway. That was different." Emily was. His voice broke, the unspoken grief choking him. "I know." Jasmine's voice was so gentle it hurt, a soothing balm on his raw wounds. "But she's not here to dance with them. You are." Lucas looked at his daughters, sitting on the carpet, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, waiting to see if he'd try, if he'd finally step up, or if he'd walk away again, retreating into the cold distance he'd maintained for the past 3 agonizing years. He thought about Emily, about that last, desperate moment before surgery when she'd gripped his hand. Her eyes filled with unwavering love and a plea he couldn't ignore. "Show them joy," she'd whispered. He'd failed her for 3 years utterly and completely. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. With a heavy sigh, Lucas lowered himself to the floor, his expensive pajamas wrinkling, his carefully constructed pride completely gone. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said to no one in particular, his voice laced with self-doubt. Jasmine smiled, a reassuring beacon in his storm of uncertainty. "None of us do." She carefully handed Isabel to him. Lucas held his daughter. Really held her, for the first time since that sterile hospital room. She was so small, so light, so fragile, and she was looking at him with an intense focus, as if she was trying to decipher the mystery of who he was. "Hi, baby girl," Lucas whispered, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and overwhelming emotion. "It's Daddy. I'm sorry it took me so long." The music played, soft and soothing, filling the silence. And Lucas, billionaire CEO Lucas James, who commanded boardrooms and built empires, started swaying back and forth on his living room floor, awkward, uncertain, terrified, but trying, finally trying. Isabel's head rested against his chest, just for a fleeting second, but it was enough. It was everything. Jasmine picked up Annabelle and Mirabelle, and they danced together in that living room, two broken adults trying to teach three broken children that it was okay to hope again, that joy could still exist, even in the face of unimaginable loss. And somewhere, deep inside, Lucas felt it, Emily watching, smiling, finally seeing him keep his promise. For 3 days, Lucas committed himself wholeheartedly. He came home early every afternoon, fed the girls their lunch, sat with them while Jasmine played Emily's music, swayed awkwardly to the rhythm, sang off-key, felt ridiculous and terrified and, incredibly, alive all at once. And slowly, so slowly, the girls were waking up, emerging from their silent world. Mirabelle kicked her legs with a renewed energy when the music played. Annabelle reached for his face with a tentative hand when he held her. Isabel made sounds, not words yet, but sounds, little hums that resonated deep within Lucas's soul and made his heart ache with a mixture of joy and unbearable sadness. He was finally keeping his promise, inching his way back to them. But on the 4th night, Lucas couldn't sleep. The images haunted him, Emily's smiling face in the videos Jasmine had found, the unopened boxes in his closet that he'd locked away for 3 long years, symbols of a pain he refused to confront. At 2 o'clock in the morning, driven by a force he couldn't resist, he went to his closet and pulled them out. The first box contained her clothes. He lifted one of her sweaters, a soft cashmere in her favorite shade of lavender, and pressed it to his face, breathing in the faint, lingering scent that was left, lavender and something else, something uniquely her, a ghost of her presence that made his heart ache with longing. The second box held the journal. Lucas had never read it, not once. He'd found it shortly after she died, seen her familiar handwriting on the cover, and immediately put it away, unable to face the intimacy of her words, knowing she'd written them while facing her own mortality. But tonight, he opened it, his hands trembling. The first entries were filled with joy and excitement. Emily documenting her pregnancy, talking about names, nursery colors, her dreams and hopes for their daughters. Then the entries changed, the tone shifting, a shadow creeping in. October 15th. The swelling is getting worse. Dr. Morrison wants to monitor me more closely. Lucas is pretending everything's fine, but I see the fear in his eyes. November 3rd. Preeclampsia diagnosis confirmed. I'm scared. Not for me, for him. For what this will do to him if I don't make it. Lucas's hands started shaking, the pages of the journal trembling in his grip. November 20th. I'm trying to prepare everything. Videos for the girls. Instructions for Lucas. I need him to know how to love them without me, but I'm terrified he'll forget how to love at all. He should stop reading, his heart screaming at him to close the book, to shut out the truth. But he couldn't. He was compelled to continue, drawn by an invisible force. December 1st. I watched Lucas with the babies today during the ultrasound. He talked to them, sang to them through my belly. He's going to be such a good father, as long as he doesn't let grief turn him into stone. Lucas's vision blurred, tears welling in his eyes. December 8th. I'm running out of time. I can feel it. My body is shutting down. I made Lucas promise today. Promise me he'd show the girls joy. But when he promised, I saw something in his eyes that scared me. He was already building walls, already preparing to shut down. God, please don't let him do that. Please don't let my death kill him, too. The journal fell from Lucas's hands, landing on the floor with a soft thud. She knew. Emily knew exactly what he would do. Knew he would lock himself away, bury himself in his grief, turn their home into a tomb. Knew he would fail their daughters, and she'd begged him not to, and he did it anyway. Lucas pressed his fists against his eyes, but the tears came anyway, hard, choking sobs that he'd been holding back for 3 agonizing years. He'd spent those years blaming grief, blaming fear, blaming the specialists who couldn't help. But the truth was simpler, more devastating, and far more painful. He'd been selfish. He'd been so consumed by his own pain that he'd abandoned his daughters to theirs. 3 innocent babies who'd never known their mother, who'd needed him to be their whole world, and he'd given them nothing but silence and distance and his own living death. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the empty closet, his voice raw with regret. "Emily, I'm so sorry." But she couldn't hear him. She was gone. And he'd wasted 3 years drowning in that loss instead of holding on to what she'd left behind, nurturing the precious lives she'd entrusted to him. Lucas picked up the journal again, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He forced himself to read the last entry, the words blurring through his tears. December 12th. Tomorrow I go into surgery. I know I won't come back, but Lucas, if you ever read this, please hear me. Our daughters will need you to be broken. They'll need you to cry, to be scared, to not have all the answers. Don't hide from them. Don't protect them from pain by refusing to feel it yourself. Children don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. Promise me you'll stay present. At the bottom of the page, in shaky handwriting, she'd written, "I love you. I forgive you already. Now forgive yourself." Lucas sat on the floor of his closet, surrounded by his dead wife's things, the weight of his failure crushing him. And in that moment he understood. Emily had known he would fail, had already forgiven him for it. But he hadn't forgiven himself, and that unforgiveness had poisoned everything, turning his love into neglect, his grief into a prison. He looked up at the ceiling, tears streaming down his face, a silent plea escaping his lips. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered, his voice thick with despair. "I don't know how to undo 3 years." But even as he said it, he knew the answer, a glimmer of hope piercing through the darkness. He couldn't undo it. He could only start from here. From this moment, this breaking, this complete and total surrender of everything he'd been holding on to, he could begin to rebuild, to heal, to love again. Lucas stood up, wiping his face, a newfound determination hardening his features. He walked down the hall to the nursery, opened the door as quietly as he could. 3 little girls sleeping peacefully in their beds, bathed in the soft glow of the night light. Annabelle, Mirabelle, Isabel, his daughters, his responsibility, his second chance. He walked to Isabel's bed first, knelt beside it, his gaze tender and filled with remorse. "I'm here now," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise." Then he moved to Mirabelle's bed, his hand gently stroking her soft cheek. "You're going to walk someday, and I'm going to be there to catch you when you fall." Finally, he stood beside Annabelle's bed, his heart aching with love. "You're going to talk, and I'm going to listen to every single word." He stayed there until sunrise, kneeling beside their beds, making silent promises he intended to keep, vows to be the father they deserved, to fill their lives with the love and joy that had been missing for so long. And when Jasmine found him there in the morning, still in yesterday's clothes, his eyes red and swollen, he looked up at her, his gaze filled with a quiet resolve, and said the words he should have said 3 years ago. "Help me save them, not maintain them. Save them." Jasmine didn't ask questions. She just nodded, her eyes filled with understanding and a glimmer of hope. She helped Lucas to his feet and said, "Let's start with breakfast." They moved through the morning quietly, a sense of purpose filling the air. Lucas washed his face, changed his clothes, came downstairs looking like a man who'd been through a war, battle-scarred but still standing, ready to face the challenges ahead. The girls were already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting patiently. "Good morning, sweethearts," Lucas said, his voice still hoarse from crying, but filled with a newfound warmth. This time, he didn't wait for Jasmine to tell him what to do. He pulled up a chair, sat down in front of Mirabelle, picked up a spoon, his movements deliberate and confident. His hands weren't shaking anymore. "Let's try this again," he whispered, his gaze fixed on his daughter's face. He fed her slowly, carefully, savoring each moment, each small victory. And between each bite, he talked to her, his voice soft and soothing. "You know what your mama used to say? She used to say, you were going to be the brave one, the one who'd climb trees and scrape her knees and never be afraid of anything." Mirabelle chewed, her eyes fixed on his face, her expression unreadable. "I think she was right. I see it in you. You're trying so hard, baby girl. And I'm so proud of you." Something shifted in Mirabelle's expression. A subtle softening, a flicker of recognition. Not a smile, but something deeper. Like she was listening, really listening, absorbing his words and feeling his love. After breakfast, Lucas did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He got on the floor. Not reluctantly, not because Jasmine asked him to, but because he wanted to, because he needed to connect with his daughters on their level, to enter their world. Jasmine put on Emily's music, that familiar jazz melody that filled the room with a sense of peace and nostalgia. Lucas lay flat on his back, looking up at the ceiling, a small smile playing on his lips. "Okay, girls," he said, his voice light. "Watch Daddy make a fool of himself." He started moving his legs, bicycle kicks in the air, just like Jasmine had shown him, his movements awkward and uncoordinated. And for the first time since Emily died, Lucas laughed at himself. A genuine, heartfelt laugh that echoed through the room. It was a small laugh, rusty from disuse, but real. A sign that the ice around his heart was finally beginning to thaw. Jasmine set the girls around him on the carpet, their eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of amusement as they watched their father's antics. "Come on," Lucas said, still kicking, his face flushed with exertion. "You can do it too. I know you can." He picked up Annabelle, held her little legs, and gently moved them in the same motion. "Like this, sweetheart. Just like this." At first, Annabelle's legs were limp, heavy, dead weight. But Lucas didn't stop. He kept moving them, kept talking to her, kept encouraging her, kept trying, and then, so subtle he almost missed it, Annabelle pushed back. Just the tiniest resistance, her muscles engaging, trying to help, trying to participate. Lucas's breath caught in his throat, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Jasmine, did you see? Did you see that?" "I saw it," Jasmine said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Annabelle, do it again," Lucas urged, his voice trembling with excitement. He moved her legs again, and this time the push was stronger, more deliberate. She was trying, really trying, her small body working with his. After 3 years of stillness, of silence, of disconnection, his daughter was trying. Lucas pulled Annabelle to his chest and just held her, his whole body shaking with emotion, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "That's my girl," he whispered into her hair, his voice thick with tears. "That's my brave, beautiful girl." They spent the entire day on the floor, lost in their own little world. Lucas didn't check his phone, didn't think about work, didn't think about anything except his daughters. He sang Emily's songs, even though he couldn't carry a tune, his voice cracking with emotion. He made up silly games that didn't make sense, but made the girls giggle. He talked to them about everything, about Emily, about how much she loved them, about how sorry he was for being gone for so long, for missing out on their lives. And the girls responded, not dramatically, not like a movie miracle, but in small, sacred ways that touched his soul. Isabel leaned into him when he held her, seeking comfort and closeness. Mirabelle kicked her legs with renewed vigor when he tickled her feet. Annabelle made a sound, just a tiny vocalization, a soft, gurgling noise, when he sang to her, a sign that she was listening, that she was engaging, that she was slowly awakening. They were waking up, piece by piece, their spirits stirring after years of slumber. By evening, Lucas was exhausted, emotionally drained, but lighter somehow, as if he'd been carrying a boulder on his shoulders for 3 years, and finally, set it down, freeing himself from its crushing weight. Jasmine brought him a glass of water, her eyes filled with concern and compassion. He was still on the floor, Isabel asleep in his arms, her small body nestled against his. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "For the water, for everything, for not giving up on them, for not giving up on me." Jasmine sat down beside him, her presence a source of comfort and strength. "Mr. James, can I tell you something?" "Lucas, please. Just Lucas," he corrected her gently. She smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Lucas, when I found those videos, I wasn't just doing it for your daughters. I was doing it for my brother, too." Lucas looked at her, confused, his brow furrowed. "Marcus gave up after he got shot. Stopped trying to walk. Stopped going to therapy. He was so angry at God, at life, at everything, and I didn't know how to reach him." She looked at the sleeping child in Lucas's arms, her gaze filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "But watching you today, watching you get on that floor and try, even though you were terrified, I realized something." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "People don't need us to have all the answers. They just need us to get on the floor with them, to be broken together, to try together." Lucas felt fresh tears welling in his eyes, a testament to the depth of his transformation. "Your brother's lucky to have you, and your daughters are lucky to have you. You just forgot for a while, but you're remembering now." Lucas looked down at Isabel, her little face peaceful in sleep, her hand curled against his chest, a fragile symbol of their connection. "I wasted so much time," he whispered, his voice filled with regret. "No," Jasmine said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "You survived, and now you're living. That's what matters." They sat there in the quiet, two people who'd both lost so much, both struggling to heal and to save the ones they loved, bound by a shared understanding of grief and an unwavering determination to find joy again. And for the first time in 3 years, Lucas felt something he thought he'd never feel again. A glimmer of peace, a fragile sense of hope. Not complete peace, not the kind that meant everything was fixed, but the kind that came from finally moving in the right direction, from finally keeping his promise, from finally being the father his daughters deserved. 2 weeks passed, filled with a newfound rhythm of love and connection. 2 weeks of Lucas coming home every day at noon, his priorities shifting from boardrooms to playrooms. 2 weeks of music filling that silent house, chasing away the ghosts of the past. 2 weeks of trying, failing, and trying again, learning to navigate the challenges of raising 3 special needs children with patience, compassion, and unwavering love. And the girls were changing, blossoming before his very eyes. Not just in small, invisible ways anymore, but in tangible, undeniable ways that filled his heart with overwhelming joy. Mirabelle could sit up on her own now without the adaptive chair, her core strengthening every day, her determination shining through. Annabelle grabbed toys, actually reached for them, gripped them with her little hands, explored them with her senses, discovering the world around her with a newfound curiosity. And Isabel, oh Isabel, was making sounds all the time now, a symphony of babbling, cooing, and gurgling that filled the house with life. Not words yet, but the building blocks of language, the foundation for communication, the sounds 1-year-olds make, the sounds she should have been making 2 years ago, but was finally making now, thanks to his unwavering commitment and the power of love. Lucas documented everything, capturing their progress in videos on his phone, sending them to the specialists who'd given up with messages that said, "Look what happens when you don't stop trying. Look what love can do." But on the 15th day, something happened that changed everything. A moment so profound, so miraculous, that it would forever be etched in his memory. It was afternoon, the sun streaming through the windows, warming the house with its golden light. Lucas was on the floor with the girls, playing with blocks, building towers and knocking them down, his heart filled with a simple, uncomplicated joy. Jasmine was in the kitchen, preparing their snack, the aroma of fresh fruit and warm cookies filling the air. Isabel was in Lucas's lap, her eyes wide with fascination as he stacked the colorful blocks in front of her. "Can you knock them down, baby girl?" he said, his voice full of genuine affection. "Show Daddy what a strong girl you are." Isabel's hand moved towards the blocks, touched them tentatively, then pushed slightly, sending the tower tumbling to the ground. "Good job," Lucas said, his voice ringing with genuine pride and delight. "Let's do it again." He rebuilt the tower, carefully placing each block on top of the other. Isabel knocked it down again, her eyes sparkling with mischief. They did it 5 times, 6, 7, each repetition bringing them closer, strengthening their bond. And then, on the 8th time, something incredible happened, something that defied explanation, something that made his heart soar. The blocks fell, scattering across the floor, and Isabel looked up at Lucas, her gaze meeting his. And she smiled. Not the small, uncertain, almost smile she'd been giving them for the past few weeks, but a real smile, wide and bright and beautiful, illuminating her entire face with pure, unadulterated joy. And then she laughed. A real laugh, clear and pure and full of unbridled happiness. A sound that had been absent from their lives for far too long. Lucas froze, his whole body going rigid, his breath catching in his throat. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, what he was hearing. "Jasmine!" he called out, his voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming joy. "Jasmine, come here. You have to see this." Jasmine rushed in from the kitchen, her face etched with concern. "What's wrong? What happened?" She laughed. Lucas exclaimed, his voice barely above a whisper. Isabel just laughed. She actually laughed. Jasmine's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Are you serious?" Lucas rebuilt the tower with trembling hands, his heart pounding in his chest. "Watch, watch," he urged, his voice barely audible. He let Isabel knock it down again, and she laughed. That same beautiful, pure sound. A melody of joy that resonated through the room, filling it with a sense of magic. Lucas started crying right there on the floor, tears streaming down his face, big, gasping sobs, but he was smiling, laughing with her, sharing in her joy. "You laughed, baby girl," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You actually laughed." He pulled Isabel close, burying his face in her soft hair, and she didn't stiffen, didn't pull away. She melted into him, still giggling, her little body vibrating with happiness. Jasmine knelt down beside them, tears streaming down her face, her heart overflowing with love and compassion. "She's happy?" Lucas whispered in disbelief, his voice filled with awe. "She's actually happy." "She is," Jasmine said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "because you showed her it's okay to be happy. You gave her permission to feel joy again." Lucas looked at her, his face wet with tears, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and gratitude. 3 years? I stole 3 years of happiness from them." "No," Jasmine said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "You gave them survival. You kept them safe. Now you're giving them life. You're giving them the chance to thrive. That's enough. That's more than enough." Lucas shook his head, his mind racing, his heart aching with regret. "Emily asked me for one thing, just one thing, show them joy, and it took me 3 years to figure out what that meant." "But you figured it out," Jasmine said gently. "That's what matters. You're here now. You're present. You're loving them. That's all that Emily ever wanted." Lucas looked at his 3 daughters, his heart swelling with love. Annabelle was watching him with those big gray eyes, her expression unreadable, but her gaze unwavering. Mirabelle was sitting up straight, alert, engaged, her curiosity piqued. And Isabel, precious Isabel, was still giggling softly in his arms, her happiness radiating outwards, filling the room with its warmth. "I want to take them outside," he said suddenly, the thought popping into his head like a revelation. Jasmine's eyebrows raised in surprise, her eyes questioning. "Outside to the garden where I first saw you with them. I want to go back there with all of us. I want to bring Emily's music, the sunshine, the fresh air, everything she wanted for them. I want to give them that today, right now." Jasmine smiled, a radiant, hopeful smile that warmed his heart. "Are you sure?" Lucas nodded, his gaze firm, his resolve unwavering. "Yes, it's time." "Then let's go," Jasmine said, her voice filled with excitement. They gathered the girls, carefully carrying them out to the garden, spreading blankets on the grass just like Jasmine had done weeks ago, creating a safe and comfortable space for them to explore and enjoy the beauty of the outdoors. Lucas put Emily's music on, louder this time, not afraid of it anymore, not running from the memories, but embracing them, celebrating them, allowing them to fill the air with their warmth and comfort. "Girls," he said, kneeling in front of them, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mama loved this place. She used to sit right here and read books, listen to music, feel the sun on her face." He paused, gathering his thoughts, his heart aching with longing. "She wanted you to know this feeling, this peace, this joy." The afternoon sun was warm, the music was soft. The breeze carried the scent of flowers Emily had planted years ago, a fragrant reminder of her presence, her love, her unwavering spirit. Lucas lay back on the grass, his arms outstretched, inviting them to join him. "Come here, sweethearts," he said softly, his voice filled with love. Jasmine helped him arrange the girls around him, one on each side, nestled against his arms, and one on his chest, her little body rising and falling with his breath. They lay there together, a broken father and his 3 broken daughters, surrounded by the ghost of the woman who'd loved them all, bound by their shared grief and their unwavering hope for a brighter future. "I miss your mama every day," Lucas whispered, his voice filled with a quiet sadness. "Every single day." He paused, gathering his thoughts, searching for the right words. "But you know what? I think she's still here in moments like this. In your laughter, Isabel, in your strength, Mirabelle, in your determination, Annabelle. I think she's watching over us, guiding us, helping us find our way." He closed his eyes, feeling their small bodies against his, their presence a source of comfort and strength. "I think she's proud of us for finally trying, finally living, for finally finding our way back to each other." Isabel made another sound, a soft, gurgling noise that sounded almost like, "Duh!" Lucas's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding in his chest. "Did you hear that?" he whispered to Jasmine, his voice filled with disbelief. "I heard it," Jasmine said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "She's trying to talk." "Say it again, baby girl," Lucas urged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Say that." Isabel looked at him, her mouth working, her eyes filled with determination. "The. Lucas sat up so fast he almost knocked her over, his hands shaking, his heart pounding in his chest. "Jasmine, she's trying to talk. She's actually trying." "She is," Jasmine said, her voice filled with awe and wonder. Lucas cupped Isabel's face in his hands, his gaze filled with love and admiration. "That's right, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice thick with tears. "Dad, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere ever again." And in that sun-drenched garden, surrounded by Emily's music and Emily's flowers and Emily's love, Lucas James finally understood what his wife had been trying to tell him. Joy wasn't something you protected your children from pain with. Joy was what you found together in the middle of the pain, by choosing to keep trying, keep loving, keep living, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. The next morning, Lucas didn't just come downstairs. He didn't just join the household's normal routine. He brought something with him, a large wooden box, the kind Emily used to keep her vinyl records in, a tangible piece of their shared past. Jasmine was in the living room with the girls, helping them with their morning exercises. She looked up, her curiosity piqued. "What's that?" Lucas set the box down on the floor with a soft thud. His hands were trembling, but not from fear this time, not from the paralyzing grip of grief. From something else, something more powerful, something that looked like hope, a beacon in the darkness. "Emily's things," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "All of them. I've been hiding them for 3 years, pretending they didn't exist. I think it's time they came back. It's time we let her back into our lives. He opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside were photo albums filled with memories, Emily's favorite blanket, a soft and worn patchwork quilt she'd made in college, a jar of seashells from their honeymoon, each shell a reminder of their love and their shared adventures, her wedding ring on a chain, a symbol of their eternal bond, and dozens of framed photos, portraits of Emily in all her radiant beauty, photos Lucas had turned backward or hidden away, unable to face the pain of seeing her face, of remembering what he'd lost. He picked up one photo, a treasured memory captured in time. Their wedding day, Emily in her flowing white dress, her face radiant with happiness, laughing at something he'd said, her eyes sparkling with love, Lucas looking at her like she was the only person in the world, his heart overflowing with adoration. "Your mama," he said to the girls, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze fixed on the photo, "was the most beautiful person I've ever known. Not just on the outside, although she was stunningly beautiful, but on the inside where it really counts. She had a heart of gold. She was kind, compassionate, and she loved you more than anything in the world." He set the photo on the mantel, right in the center where everyone could see it, a prominent place of honor, a testament to her enduring presence in their lives. Then he picked up another photo, another cherished memory. Emily, pregnant, glowing with anticipation, her hands resting protectively on her swollen belly, her eyes shining with the promise of motherhood. "And she loved you 3 more than anything in this world. She couldn't wait to meet you, to hold you, to love you." Annabelle's eyes were fixed on the photo, really looking at it, studying her mother's face, trying to connect with the woman she'd never known, but whose love surrounded her still. Lucas kept pulling things out of the box, each item a trigger for memories, both joyful and painful. Emily's favorite book, a dog-eared copy of Pride and Prejudice, a testament to her love of literature and her romantic soul. Her coffee mug with the chipped handle she refused to throw away, a symbol of her quirky personality and her attachment to the things she loved. A scarf that still smelled faintly of her perfume, a blend of lavender and vanilla that filled his senses with a rush of nostalgia. "I thought if I hid all of this, if I locked it away, it would hurt less," Lucas said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "But I was wrong. It just made the hurt last longer. It just prolonged the pain and kept us from healing." He looked at Jasmine, his gaze filled with a newfound determination. "I'm done hiding from the pain, from the memories, from life. I'm ready to face it all, to embrace it all, to remember her, to celebrate her, to keep her memory alive for our daughters." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, her heart swelling with pride and compassion. "Emily would be so proud of you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "She always knew you were capable of this. She always believed in you." "I hope so," Lucas said, his voice cracking with emotion. "God, I hope so. I just want her to know that I'm trying, that I'm doing my best, that I'm finally being the father she wanted me to be." He turned to his daughters, his gaze filled with love and hope. "What do you say we go outside one more time? All of us together. We'll spread out Emily's blanket, listen to her music, and soak up the sunshine." He queued up the music, this time bypassing his phone. Instead, he chose the old portable speaker, a relic from Emily's past, the one she used to lug around everywhere. The sound it produced was a revelation, richer, fuller, resonating with a raw, unfiltered authenticity. Lucas settled comfortably in the center of the blanket, arms outstretched, his gaze softening. "Come here, girls," he coaxed, his voice laced with affection. "Come to Daddy." Jasmine, with a gentle smile, carefully placed them a few feet away, then took a step back. She consciously removed herself from the equation, recognizing that this moment belonged solely to Lucas and his daughters. It was sacred. "Come on, sweethearts," Lucas encouraged, his voice gentle yet firm, cutting through the air with a clarity of purpose. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise." For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. The girls remained frozen, their eyes locked on their father. Then, A spark. Mirabelle initiated the movement, not with her arms but her legs. A tentative push forward with one, followed by the other. Crawling. She was actually crawling. A lump formed in Lucas's throat, choking back a wave of emotion. "That's it, baby girl," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "That's it. You can do it." Mirabelle pressed on, traversing 3 feet, then 4. Her movements were shaky, uncoordinated, yet fueled by an unwavering determination. And when she finally reached him, Lucas swooped her up, enveloping her in a bear hug. "You did it!" he choked out, tears streaming down his face, laughter bubbling up from deep within. "Oh my God, you did it!" Then, an even more extraordinary event unfolded. Annabelle, captivated by her sister's triumph, placed her tiny hands on the ground. She mimicked Mirabelle's movements, attempting to crawl. It wasn't as far, not as strong, but she moved. She tried. Lucas, his heart overflowing, reached out and pulled her close. "Yes, sweetheart. Yes, you're so brave." And then there was Isabel, beautiful, quiet Isabel, who had been observing her sisters nestled in their father's arms. She opened her mouth and a sound emerged. Not "duh," not a mere fragment of a word. "Dada." Clear. Perfect. Real. Time seemed to stand still. "Say it again, baby," Lucas pleaded, his voice trembling. "Please say it again." Isabel looked directly at him, her eyes filled with innocent love. "Dad." Lucas crumbled, falling forward, gathering all 3 girls into his arms, his body racked with sobs. "I'm here," he whispered brokenly. "I'm here, my loves. Daddy's here." Jasmine stood at the edge of the garden, her hand clamped over her mouth, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. This was the realization of Emily's unspoken wish. This was the promise fulfilled. Not a flawless existence, not even complete healing, but simply presence, simply the act of trying, simply love that refused to be extinguished. Lucas held his daughters in that sun-drenched garden, and a sensation washed over him, one he hadn't experienced since the day Emily died. Completeness. Not because the pain had vanished, it would forever be a part of him, but because he had finally grasped the profound lesson Emily had been trying to impart all along. Life wasn't about shielding those you cherish from every pain, every disappointment, every stumble. It was about being present during those moments, offering solace in their hurt, comfort in their disappointment, and a hand to help them rise after a fall. It was about joining them on the floor, sharing their tears, and striving alongside them. It was about demonstrating that hope wasn't a treacherous illusion. Giving up was. Lucas lifted his gaze to the heavens, tears mingling with the sunlight on his face, his daughters safely cradled in his arms. "Thank you," he whispered, addressing Emily, God. Whatever guiding force in the universe had orchestrated Jasmine's entry into their lives at precisely the moment they needed her most. "Thank you for not giving up on me." The music continued to play, its melody weaving through the air. The sun maintained its radiant glow. The flowers continued to bloom, their vibrant colors a testament to life's enduring beauty. And 3 little girls, who had seemingly forgotten how to live, were finally irrevocably awakening. Not through the intervention of medicine, not through the power of wealth, not through the expertise of specialists, the benefits of therapy, or the creation of perfect circumstances, but because a broken father had rediscovered the art of hope and, in turn, taught his daughters to do the same. Sometimes, the miracles we fervently pray for manifest in unexpected forms. Sometimes, they're not about mending what's broken. Sometimes, they're about learning to navigate life with those fragmented pieces and consciously choosing joy. In any case, this was precisely that kind of miracle. The kind that initiates a profound internal transformation. The kind that serves as a poignant reminder that it's never too late to try. It's never too late to love. It's never too late to